Hey guys, it's Matt Hanham here and welcome to the Amplify Your Business podcast. Matt Hanham here, and we're back with the Amplify Your Business podcast, and this is my second installment of my little Game Changers series on Lombok as we attend this conference. So I'm privileged to have Chris from the Game Changers sit with me for the next little bit. I'm talking very much like I think I'm on radio right now, so we'll probably tone that right down after that. But Chris, welcome.
Thank you, mate. Thank
you very much for joining me and just generally having a chat. We've had many good chats, but we're just going to do this one with a microphone and see where we roll. But cool. For the benefit of those who may not know you, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, cool. Okay, so Chris, head coach from the Game Changers. Been with these guys for a couple of years now. Known Barry, the CEO and founder, for about 4 years. And yeah, we kind of met early on in our coaching kind of training and stayed in touch, and yeah, we just kind of found some synergies and opportunities present themselves, and I started out doing a little bit of contract coaching for his overflow clients, and that's kind of morphed into leading up the Opulence program, which you're involved with.
I happen to be a member of. Yeah. There we go. Usually, it's the other way around.
Yeah, that's right.
In terms of who's asking who questions, but no, well, look, it's great to have you, and I even more so, we've had many chats, but we got a bit more insight. I got a bit more insight last night into some more of your past, and my next question leading into that would be, what's something your family and friends might know about you that generally people don't in this, who work with you in your current capacity. What's you've got plenty of history, but what's something you want to touch on?
Probably the variety, I guess, is what most people are kind of surprised by, of the amount of different things I've done to generate income in my life. I spent 11 years in the military. Well, even before that, I was kind of almost going to be a golf pro, so that was another kind of odd.
Really? Oh, yeah. See, there's something new. Do you still play golf?
I do still play golf, but not anywhere near the standard that I once was capable of.
Okay.
11 years in the military. Then I...
Hang on, let me just pause.
Yeah.
How does one go from being almost golf pro to signing some paperwork to end up in the military?
The short answer, I tripped and hit my head. I actually got excluded, or almost got excluded from uni the first time I went. And I talked my way out of getting excluded by telling the university that I'd go off and get some discipline by doing what was then the Ready Reserve scheme, which was basically you went in and did a 1 year full time as a soldier, and then they sponsored you for 4 years after that while you did some reserve time, and they sponsored you through uni. And I managed to convince the dean that I was just a little awry because I'd just moved out of home, and anyway, he bought into that story, and I thought, 1 year, what can it hurt? It sounded like a good idea at the time, and I don't know what happened, but it turned into 11 years. So I transitioned across the officer corps and ended up in as a cavalry officer, and had some interesting experiences during that period of my life. So that was all of my 20s basically.
Yeah. So how does 1 year turn into 11? And I guess I'm leading in because I know where I want to go with this conversation. But how do you go from I'm just gonna hit this for 12 months and then sort of not wake up, but metaphorically sort of wake up 11 years later and move to something new?
It was probably ego, to be honest. I had that heavily stroked as a soldier. There's two kind of levels within the military broadly. There's the soldier corps and then the officer corps. So your start points are different, and the officer corps is involved in the operations and leadership, and there's still obviously that within the junior ranks. However, there's a separation of responsibility. I did that first year as a soldier, and I was identified as having potential, and basically, just got encouraged to apply to become an officer, and
right.
It's really sad when I think about it now, but I literally just didn't have a better idea of what I was going to do, and I thought, it sounds okay. I'll just give it a crack and see what happens. And yeah, life kind of zipped by for those first few years, and before you know it, you've made some pretty significant commitments, and you're kind of locked in.
I guess that's where the bit I wanted to get to was the, and relating that situation back to even business owners, I think. So people will jump out of what they're doing because, often because they're running away, I think. I don't think people, they dream of freedom, but they're actually wanting to run away from the other side of it. But they then jump into, let's face it, most businesses are not aggressively innovating into where they jump into. People often jump into something similar to what they did, they just now own it, or they jump into a different direction, but then they just run that business the same as the rest of the industry does, and there's not necessarily a lot of innovation. So do you think that's just the same sort of pattern and they just, once you jump into that environment, it's very easy to monotonously roll on in what that is, for something like a decade?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think a big challenge that we face at this kind of time in human history is that our greatest challenge isn't famine or war or not having enough. Our greatest challenge is around getting more and more comfortable with having more than enough in abundance, in food, in access to wealth and experience. And I think that we protect ourselves with these masks and suits of armour, and whether it's disappearing into the military system, whether it's going down the corporate path and getting bought into the hierarchical ladder climbing politics.
And I can definitely say I spent a good 6 years in that exact place, and I can, clearly not the same, but I can see a lot of similarities with how it sounds like you approached your military career.
It's just like the underlying principles are the same. It's a different suit. Right. But it's still a suit. It's still a layer of protection. Whether it's the safety of the hierarchy of the military, where you got a very distinct, clear left and right of arc, and you just operate within it. Whether it's diving down that corporate pathway, or whether, as you said, it's saying, I'm going to go out and do this business thing, and then losing track of the reason why you started it in the first place, and ending up working harder and spending less time with your family than you ever did in what you were trying to move away from. Yeah,
that's pretty powerful. I mean, there's a lot of ways we can even go with that, but I mean, how do you try and then help your clients sort of just get themselves away from that same cycle? Because I think what we do, and I've definitely been guilty myself, and I see it in others, is we grab that system and we jump somewhere else, but then we sort of try and apply the same system, even though we're wanting to change it, where we sort of bring it across with us. So how do you help sort of get deeper in and to get the clients into a place where they can start to achieve what they're really looking for?
Yeah, it's this counterintuitive understanding that we can have an intellectual insight into how we want to experience life, a conscious picture of what we want to experience. However, there's a far more powerful process at work in our unconscious that includes everything from the environment that we were born into, and the struggles and suffering that's been passed down and that we unconsciously took on very early on in our life, and then the unconscious strategies we created in whatever path we headed down in order to survive within that environment. So for me, it's about reconnecting with and starting to shine a light on those areas of our patterning and our programming that we've lost touch with.
Okay.
Yeah, my belief is that to create sustainable change, we need to create new routines, rituals, and habits that start rewiring our neural pathways to move us from an automated processing system that's actually driving us away from where we desire to be, and start rewiring via consistent, habitual, ritualized, resourceful habits that start utilising that same automated processing system to drive us in a direction that we actually want to be moving in life.
Yeah. which is pretty massive when you stop and think about it for a few seconds. So it's pretty significant. And so do you see a lot of regression, like sort of as people are starting to grow and starting to make some change? I mean, do you see a lot of like 2 steps forward, 1 step back type, 1 step back type thing in the process, or how does it?
So I see it as a helix, as an ever-expanding helix. And that these underlying patterns or challenges or obstacles that we've unconsciously created are like these straight lines that intersect this ever-expanding arc of helix.
Okay.
So we have these repetitive patterns, but we're not in a loop per se. We're still always moving somewhere different, but we're encountering themes that are similar. So it often feels like that. 2 steps forward, 1 steps back. However, I really believe that it's up to us, and this is the process of what's most important is starting to shift the meaning we allocate to these experiences. Yeah. Rather than seeing it as a repetitive 1 step back, right? We see it as another opportunity to improve and take a tiny half step.
Yeah. Because there really, I mean, that really my belief sits there too. There isn't really a 1 step back process because many of the backs are actually probably more positive than the 2 steps forward situation. Yep. And I think you sort of touched on the framing of that as well, and something that I'm certainly digging deeper into, and I know you have as well, is Stoicism. And even I've looked at some more modern stuff, and what came out in the sort of English 50s era was quite interesting. A couple little touches on there, but really dating right back to Marcus Aurelius and Seneca and many others. And I personally am trying to be more active in that mindset, because I think you're definitely right. It's the perception that we apply to any of these circumstances, and in a space where we're moving to, I guess, people call it entitlement, but we have so much more choice. Yeah. But I think when something does go bad, we have to be able to be comfortable with that and perceive that, not necessarily in a bad approach. So what is your sort of, how do you see Stoicism being sort of a factor going forward? And in my view, it's one tool and strategy, but how do you see that as an approach? And do you think it's something that we maybe should be teaching more people going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really interesting. The more I kind of study Stoicism, I see it almost as the underlying principles that have created the personal development industry. Yeah. When you look at the stars of the personal development industry, right?
The rock stars.
The rock stars, yeah. Their messaging, when you break it down, is really similar. The underlying principles are all the same, and they're not complicated. They're simple principles. It's just they're not easy to implement because they take consistent, long-term, lifelong energy and effort to create mastery in these things. And for me, like when you read Marcus Aurelius and Seneca and you know these kind of the grandfathers of Stoicism, the principles that they're sharing are the cornerstones of what it means to take responsibility for experiencing life in an ever-improving way.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, we should be teaching this stuff earlier and earlier and it's happening. It's starting, it's starting to be taught in schools now. Mindfulness is starting to be taught in schools. I see in my experiences coaching, I see people younger and younger starting to ask these questions. Like, there must be more to this. Like, this whole show up and climb a corporate ladder just doesn't hold the appeal that even 10 years ago that it did.
No, I've definitely even witnessed that myself. It's such a rapid change. Yeah. Just even that period of time since it's been about 10 years since I left that space. Yeah. And just watching people's approach and also knowing people that are still there, which I'm sure you're in the same situation. Many of them hate it, and they're on exceptional incomes and otherwise, and they just but it's not fulfilling. Yeah. At the same time, I don't know that they necessarily show any gratefulness for what they do have, which Absolutely. There's some compelling things on the right side of the fence for them too. which is another piece of the puzzle.
Totally. I think gratitude and self-acknowledgement are the foundational pieces that allow us to evolve. I believe that we need to love where we're at and train ourselves to recognize that everything is perfect, that nothing needs to be fixed, that we simply need to reconnect with our most authentic truth more and more often. And that, for me, is a letting go process, not an adding in process. I see that this experience that we're having, and anyone listening to this is having a similar experience, otherwise you wouldn't be listening to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Where
Right.
You're either just starting to ask questions, or you're well down the path of asking questions of having an experience of more consistent positive emotion, right? And this isn't about suggesting that we should repress or suppress our emotions, right? I fully believe that all the full spectrum of emotions is what we're designed to experience. However, what I also believe, and Viktor Frankl, I think, is the kind of the for me, like the shining light of this concept.
Yeah. Man's Search for Meaning.
Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah.
Right? And if anyone hasn't read that book, just go out and get it today. It's fundamental to understanding the human condition. It's about recognizing that we can either be reactive to our emotions and fall into our lower basal thinking, our the oldest hardware that's in our brain, right? Our brain stem and limbic system, where that fight or flight, reactivity, animal, basal, lizard brain stuff lives. Or we can recognise that our prefrontal cortex gives us this unique ability to create space between an external stimulus and how we choose to respond to that. So I don't believe it's our responsibility to not feel the emotions that happen as a consequence of an external event, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe the Dalai Lama can manage that shit, but
well, maybe still human, right?
Still
I
human.
believe so. There's still a limitation somewhere.
Yep. For most of us, though, I believe that those emotions aren't even our responsibility to stop or influence.
Yeah.
Like something happens and there's a series of chemical releases that just happen. Yeah. However, no matter what they are, we have the capacity to create space, pause, take a big breath, and make a conscious decision, engage our prefrontal cortex, which is our higher level thinking, and that's not good or bad, that's just, it's newer, and it gives us access to more choice than our older hardware, right? And we can use that to decide consciously what the most resourceful action is in response to those emotions.
Yeah.
So we start being at cause rather than at effect. So rather than being at the effect of our emotions like all the other animals on the planet, and something happens and we just react, we feel the emotions and we start to use those emotions as signposts. And then we engage our prefrontal cortex, connect with our intuition, and then make a conscious decision and respond to whatever that circumstance is. And that's where it all starts for me. That combined with this focus on getting better at loving where we're at through gratitude and self-acknowledgement, you combine those two things together, and that's where I see the magic kind of growth and evolution really starting to come from.
So how do we connect that to business?
Well, for me, I believe, apart from our intimate relationships, that business is the next most powerful tool to connect with what's most real. Because as everyone listening knows, it's freaking hard work.
I thought it was easy, man.
And as I said, except for our most intimate relationships, no other endeavour offers us the opportunity to connect with and let go of our shit, our patterning, our unresourceful, unconscious choices that we made very early in life. So I see business as a powerful tool to grow and evolve as individuals, and look, Steve Jobs, love him or hate him, he's a remarkable human being. And, you know, he said, I love this quote of his, that he said, no business will ever outgrow its founder.
Yeah.
And that's such a powerful insight, to recognise that really business needs to start with the inner game, right? You can have all the strategies in the world. You can have all of the mentors and advisors in the world giving you the best strategy. If you don't value yourself, if you're disrespecting and being unresourceful in your conversations and engagement with yourself, your business is never going to be as successful as it could be. Right? So it's about shining the light on the stuff, the emotions that come up as a result of our engagements in business, and making that mean that it's an opportunity to practice being a better human being, to be a slightly better version of ourselves today than we were yesterday. And that's going to result in improved business outcomes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bob, can we take a 5-second silence there just so that can be digested? But no, really powerful. And I'm going to take a slightly different track. So 11 years in the military, you step out of that, you probably have something else going on in between, but we're going to leap a little bit forward and you decide to be a coach.
Yeah.
How did you first make revenue?
So I was, again, looking back, I was quite lucky in that I was a little bit cautious in my approach. So I was in a sales role. I was selling medical devices for like a large international, multinational company, and I managed to transition into a part-time role. So
you had a side hustle.
So I had a side hustle. Yeah, absolutely. So I came, a long winding journey, came to the coaching, came across it, enrolled in the program, went and did my first weekend in January, and then after like halfway through day 2, I was like, this is definitely what I want to be doing. And by the end of February, I transitioned to a part-time role in my corporate sales role.
Okay.
And I spent about 9 or 10 months building up the business, and I went the old school path. So I did like networking groups, built a small but strong network, and consciously made a choice that I wasn't going to approach it with any desperation. So the amount of money I was getting from my job, from the JOB, covered all the bills. Yeah, covered all the bills.
Good place to start.
Totally, right? That was like just. Yeah. But I didn't need to make any money from the business. So I actually didn't get my first client for almost 3 months. And it came. I was involved with a BNI networking group. Okay.
Yeah. Sort of aware of those ones.
Totally right. and again, lots of pros and cons to that organisation.
But there's some work in that. Well, totally. That's an aggressive from a work standpoint, and what's required, and to sort of give and get in that place. But people will look after you, but it's all about what you put into.
Totally. And for me, obviously, the money that I generated from that was important. Equally as important, absolutely, was the fact that I was forced to be talking about what it was the value proposition that I had every single week, multiple times every single week. I had to sit down with someone or stand up in front of the group and speak about what it was I was creating. And I sucked at it to start with, but after 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks of doing this, and through building these relationships with other human beings, I got to a point where someone said, well, you know what, I think we might need to have a conversation. And I got my first client, and that had some great outcomes, and they told someone else about the fact that there was good outcomes.
And I'm sure you're shitting yourself at the time to get started, like everyone does. It's not easy, right?
It's not easy.
You don't just walk out and go, yeah, we can help you. I'm great. I know what I'm doing.
Totally.
Yeah.
And, and I look back on all the amount of time and energy I spent on deciding on my price point and what my package was going to be, and not even the name of the business and what car, you just waste so much time in those early stages.
Storytelling, right?
Totally.
Yeah. Telling yourself what you can't do and that you need perfection.
Totally. The website's got to be perfect before I can ever have a client. Well, it's just a crock. But anyway, that for me was and by about the 6-month mark, I had created enough revenue from the business that I was able to let go of the other job. I'd made a few commitments, so I spent about the next 3 months a bit flatlining because I took me another couple of months to move out completely. And then and it's just kind of been a bit of a roller coaster since then.
Yeah.
As I think most people again listening will appreciate.
Yeah, definitely. So how do you market yourselves now? What's different from your approach then?
Yeah. Okay. So by kind of joining forces with Barry and the Game Changers, it allowed me to focus more on my zone of genius, right? Mm-hmm. I learned how to market and I learned how to do the business development, and I'd done that before in previous roles, and I'm okay at it, but I'm not awesome at it. Mm-hmm. And I don't not love it. Like, I don't hate it, but I don't love it either.
Yeah. Okay.
So by connecting with the Game Changers, it allowed me to spend less time on those components of the business and spend more time on the stuff that I am really good at. And the difference from the approach I had under my business prior to joining the Game Changers was much more face-to-face and old school. Yeah. The way we do it now is much more aligned with kind of the way you approach business now as well. I know, Matt, it's a very heavy focus on utilising the platforms, particularly Facebook marketing plus content creation, lead generation and I really have grown to appreciate and respect and even enjoy it a lot more now by recognising the value of having that capacity to dial things up and down. Yeah. When I was relying on word of mouth and referral business, it's good, but you can't influence it.
You can't dial it up and down.
You can't dial it up and down.
You have to work pretty hard to dial it up and down, running around every corner pub trying to talk to people.
Yeah. Whereas we have a system now where we know that for every 100 leads, we're going to create 6 sales. Yeah. Right? Yeah. The data doesn't lie. The averages don't lie. So we know that we just look at what our targets are and we know what we need to spend to create that number of leads, which leads to the number of sales calls we have, which leads to the number of new members in the program. So it takes the guesswork and the stress out of it because you've got a system and a process that you can, as you said, dial up and down as required.
Yeah, awesome. All right, a slight different change of path. So life-wise, I mean, what does a typical week look like for you now? If you're starting to utilise technology and tools, I mean, how do you live the life of your dreams?
Yeah, so I've just finished 18 months travelling Australia with my family, living out of a van, running my business, and working with the Game Changers, and that was epic. We just did a full loop, and it was amazing. And we took our 6-month-old and travelled for 18 months. So she's spent 3/4 of her life travelling Australia. Which, is pretty cool. Yeah. I had some great adventures. I had to climb trees and sand dunes.
Is that just to get Wi-Fi when you're trying to do a coaching call?
Oh, yeah. Gaffer tape was my friend, I can tell you. Getting my dongle up in the frickin'... yeah, anyway, that's pretty funny. But, my partner's a photographer, so she kind of took a collage of all my offices as we travelled around Australia, and we had a look at it the other day, and it's pretty epic, hanging out over river, just kind of in the crook of a tree on a session with the dongle kind of strapped to 3 tent poles up, sticking out the top. It was a pretty cool experience, and we've just decided to settle on the East Coast now, moved into a place on the beach in New Brighton, work from home. Travelling here in Lombok with you now for our quarterly retreat. It's it really is. I spend. There's still challenge. There's always going to be challenge, but I absolutely see it now as opportunity.
Yeah.
Much more often. I'm not far from perfect. I still have my days where I feel a bit sorry for myself or beat myself up, but they're significantly less than they ever were, and I make choices now based much more around what's aligned with my most deepest truth. My priority is time with my family. And that's my boundaries are firm around that.
Yeah, so that's actually that was my next question. I mean, there's a lot of freedom there, right? And anyone listening just thinks, wow, that guy's just got this incredible freedom. But like, I know you well enough and I understand the situation enough to know that there's some incredible discipline that has to be in play to actually allow that kind of freedom.
Totally.
And can you just speak on that?
Yeah, so for me, scheduling is really important. And boundary maintenance, right? And that includes ensuring that the most important thing, it starts with ensuring that the most important things are put into the schedule first. So I have an hour lunch break that I spend with my partner and daughter every day. And that, like, I can count on one hand how many times that's been interrupted this year, right? I have 5 scheduled sessions from Tuesday to Friday that are available for client calls, and they start at 10 and they finish at 4:45, and that doesn't change, right? And the reason that doesn't change is because I know the value of being able to focus on what it is that's right in front of me, and for me to be able to go to my family and say, I'm going to be available from 7 to 9 in the morning for an hour at lunch and after 5, between 5 and 7, right? And that means that in those hours that I choose to focus on work, it's respected, and it's not, there's no interruption, and I'm able to be fully present when I'm doing whatever it is I'm doing.
Yeah, focused,
right? It took time to get to that point, right? Because there's fear. Like, I used to see my clients whenever they wanted, right? It was 6 o'clock in the morning and 9 o'clock at night. Yeah, no worries, And because I had fear that if I took more responsibility for creating a firm boundary, that I'd lose clients. And it's BS.
Hasn't been the case.
It's not the case.
It's been the opposite, hasn't it?
Totally the opposite. and it's a powerful model to walk my talk more consistently. And as well, like when we look to our kids, right, the best way that they learn, the only way they really learn is through mirroring the behaviours of the people most important in their life.
Not what you're telling them, but what they see you doing, right?
Yeah, and the same goes, and I can't be an effective coach if I'm not practicing walking my talk. It does, again, it's important, like really important to recognize I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
I don't get it right all the time, but I practice always moving back towards that my most authentic center line whenever I notice myself off track. And that's what I see as this process of growth is, it's not about being perfect. It's not about shoulds or I know better than this or any of that. It's about celebrating increased awareness whenever we notice we're moving away from authenticity and giving ourselves, as Viktor Frankl says, choice to express our humanity, because that's powerful every single time, and it needs to be celebrated every single time. I'm not talking about throwing a freaking party down the main street of town. I'm just talking about giving yourself that little acknowledgement that you're choosing to move in a more resourceful decision, because each time you make that choice, it's those 1,000 little decisions that create our experience. Because when we practice that at those times where it's less important, where the consequence is lower, when we hit that junction in life where it really matters, where that decision is going to have a significant impact on the rest of our lives, if we practiced doing the resourceful choice in all those little things, then we make a more resourceful choice at the big moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I believe that like boundary creation, setting yourself up for success, being full of gratitude, giving yourself acknowledgements for things that you are doing well, right, are the foundational pieces that allow us to get better at making those resourceful decisions in an ever-expanding kind of volume in our life.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, we're in Lombok here, and it's the night time, and I'm sure I'm pinching some family time as well. So I have 2 more questions, and you can answer them quickly,
cool.
And then we'll wrap this up. But we've spoken Viktor Frankl, but one book. If we could say, hey, go out and buy this book. This is something that you've maybe an all-time favourite, or maybe just something you're working through now that you think is just quite powerful.
Wow, that's tough, man. I've got
there's so many, right? A recent one. Just pick one of your most recent.
So I just read actually one that has had a pretty significant impact, and I'm gonna have to give you this one and then 2 others by the same author. Right?
That's fine.
But I just read The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks.
Okay.
Really loved it. Some really significant concepts in there that are framed up in a way I haven't seen before, right? Remember, these underlying principles are pretty similar. It's all just those slight perspective shifts that give us an access a deeper layer. Really, really enjoyed it. Easy read, couple of really deep concepts that I'm still kind of feeling a little bit deeper, having just finished it a couple of days ago.
Right.
And then connecting with this Stoicism that we talked about earlier. So Ryan Holiday, for me, he's a relatively young guy, but he's written a couple of books that are really on point. Obstacle is the Way, Ego is the Enemy, and his latest one, The Daily Stoic.
Yeah.
And they're just, if you're interested in Stoicism or just interested in understanding it, they're a great place to start.
So, I love those books, and Ryan Holiday as well, and I think a really good... the 2 books are good explainers, but the Daily Stoic's an interesting one because it is deep, and I think the first time I did read some Stoicism, it's probably not where a lot of people are ready to delve into, but that's a really good way to just grab some bite-sized, bits of data and just process something. So those 4 books from the one book recommendation. Actually, I think we're lucky to stop you there.
Oh yeah, 25. Do you want me to give it?
But some obviously mad books, and then just the final thing, if people listening can just do one thing to amplify their business, and whether it be big or small, what's just one thing that they could just inject to get things rolling for themselves?
It's gotta be self-awareness, right? The game always needs to start with the light going in, not out. Our external experience mirrors our internal. It's not the other way around. So it's not about creating something out there, whether it's a revenue target, whether it's taking the next step in your career. That isn't going to give you what you're looking for. You need to create that internally in order to be ready to experience it out there. So for me, we just need to flip that spotlight and journey inwards rather than looking outwards for the solutions.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. Seriously, I really, really appreciate your time.
No worries, mate.
And it was awesome to have you on the show. And there's a ton of value for whoever gets to listen to that. So, yep, I hope everyone enjoyed that. And just lastly, as we wrap up, if we want to find out more about you and the Game Changers, sort of where should we go look?
Yeah, cool. So come check us out. The Game Changers. We're based over in Perth, but www.the-game-changers.com.au, and yeah, we're always here to have a chat, and we'd love to help you guys on your journey of going inward on that process of improving yourselves, and therefore improving all the results that you're achieving in your business and in your life.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris.
Cool.
Hey guys, Matt Hanham here, and I really hope you enjoyed that episode of the Amplify Your Business podcast. I hope you got some awesome value out of the experience, and I'd love to hear comments below, or if you want to share it with your friends, that'd be great too.